a guidance counselor, excuse me, at the high school, a social worker at Montello, all are needed to help address the high ELL enrollment that they have there. So the ELL budget is a little bit more than just teachers, ed techs, interpreters, and ELL department staff. The back page is just a sum of the requests that I've made. The excuse me, the Farwell position, the Geiger position, and the McMahon position. Excuse me. And then an increase for interpretation and translation services. So by law, we are required to provide interpreters and translated documents to families. And so the full day conferences have definitely increased our budget for providing interpreters. And then as we begin to provide more translated documents, especially as they're related to special education, which we're legally required to do, we do have increased translation services. I have an amazing staff member. Her name is Joanna Beller. She's the administrative assistant, and she's amazing for many reasons, but one of the big reasons is she's great at keeping an eye on our budget and works really hard to find low cost but high quality translation services and getting us kind of credits and discounts on our accounts. So she's done a great job of keeping that total low, but we do need to increase it to account for an increasing amount of the times we connect with families. And that's the sum of the budget.
Any discussion or questions from the board?
Hi.
So I asked this before, but I think you might be able to help me a little bit more.
Yeah.
With the ed tech positions, especially with the higher level of level 2, which I would think that the ed techs would help out with.
Yep.
There's not a lot of ed tech positions, and I'm
Yep.
just wondering why. And I know that there are teacher positions being requested, but not ed tech positions. Can you talk a little bit about that, please?
So that's really intentional and purposeful. It's really designed around the idea of putting the most qualified people in front of our students who have the most growth to make. And so we try to be really intentional about hiring staff that, in accordance with the law, have ELL training and certification. And most ed techs typically don't have that. If they did, they would be working as a teacher. So it's really designed to make sure that our most struggling students have the support they need in front of them.
If I could also add to that, correct me if I'm wrong, Hillary, but I believe you and principals have in recognizing this, is converting that ed tech ELL position at McMahon to a teacher position.
Correct.
And in the case of Longley, while it's budget neutral, it's adding an additional teacher and eliminating 2 ELL ed tech positions.
Right.
Am I correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
And those positions were not eliminated completely. They were folded into, I think, Title I grant funds.
Okay.
So nobody lost their job over that.
I guess I'm trying to figure out, so are teachers in the classroom are they co-teaching, or what is the model? Because again, I'm thinking of the least. I understand your statement about qualifications, and I'm just wondering then maybe why aren't we working on getting ELL ed techs to support in the classroom so that we have support for teachers in the classroom that are not ELL teachers.
Yep. So the service delivery model, it looks different at different schools, and that's just based on the needs of the teachers, the needs of the students, and what works best. So typically, in general, we have a pull-out model, which means an ELL teacher pulls out groups of ELL students for maybe 30 to 45 minutes. They do a reading group, literacy language group, and then typically they do a math language group. And so it's a pull-out model. When they're in the classroom, the goal of ELL instruction is to make sure as best as possible, students have the language they need in that academic area to access the classroom teacher's instruction. So it's the classroom teacher and the ELL teacher collaborate to make sure they're in general on the same page. Now, an ELL teacher has to collaborate typically with more than one teacher. So that's why grade level team meetings are really important, where everybody's together and talking about what standards they're teaching and where they need to go for instruction. Depending on the level of students, I think a misconception often with our ELL students is when people think of students receiving direct instruction from an ELL teacher, they're typically thinking of students who are new to the country and have almost no English. Most of the students in Lewiston, especially at the elementary level, were born in the United States, and their conversational English is that of proficient their English peers. So it's really just the academic language that students need to focus in on. And so they're able to do really well in the classroom and just need that additional support to make sure they're closing the gap. Students who, and this is a small population in Lewiston, but students who are new to the country, so have been in the country less than 3 years, and have very limited English proficiency, so we're talking about words, phrases, they typically do receive more support from an ELL teacher. For example, Montello has a newcomer program, and so that ELL teacher works specifically with newcomers K6, and she does have a very full caseload. In those cases, we do typically have the ELL ed techs go in and provide support for students who need support accessing the material, but typically, especially at the lower level, kids learn and pick up that conversational, that social and instructional language in order to be successful in following basic classroom instructions really well.
I guess that was my point. I think that students should be staying in the classroom, and
Yep.
what support they need to be in the classroom, to me,
Yeah.
is an ed tech, rather than the pullout, which, especially because I do think that the majority fall into a category where they're not the newcomers.
Yeah.
And the more direct contact they have with that language and it being used rather than being pulled out. That's why I was asking all the
Yeah.
questions about how the model works,
Yep.
because I feel that the more they're in the classroom, the better.
I agree with you 100%, and research would agree with you 100%. We do have some co-teaching models. It can be very challenging because there are some classroom teachers who may not be comfortable with having another person in the classroom, for co-teaching to work, it really there's a huge part of that relationship that needs to happen, and in order to establish that relationship, there's a lot of professional development that needs to occur, and that hasn't been able to happen widespread. Doing more co-teaching and doing more push-in is a goal of mine, because it's most effective, but because it's also what our parents want for kids. They don't want their kids pulled out. They want them in the classroom. And then the older the students get, being pulled out has a stigma attached to it. So it is definitely a goal of mine. It is something I would like to work more on. I think we need to have a school that's willing to pilot more of a co-teaching model with ELL for a year or two and work out some of the bugs, and then roll it out to other schools. Yeah. Great question.
Can you explain again level 1? I think I heard should have a teacher, but level 2 and 3 ed techs would be sufficient.
So level 2 students are still significantly below grade level. In Lewiston, typically the model has been to have an ed tech service those students. Should they have an ELL teacher? Yes, but typically we've used an ed tech to get by. I will say that in Lewiston, we do have a long-term English language learner problem, meaning that we have students staying identified as English language learners far too long. We have roughly 336 kids who have been with us since pre-K or K for some of them and are still identified as English language learners. So we absolutely could, under the law, get away with an ELL ed tech for level 2s, we do, but it's having a teacher in front of them is better.
So So at the end of the year, if all these positions are added to the ELL program, at the end of the year, are you going to be able to show numbers where we were able to get students out of the ELL program quicker? And to even go a little deeper, do you have numbers now that justify why teachers are needed, so that it isn't just, I understand you as the leader of the department, have your beliefs, but is there data to support what you're saying for the need?
So I guess I was, in my opinion, that having 51 students for one teacher to service, having 51 students for one teacher to service is the rationale for having another teacher at Farwell, because currently there's one. And that's 51 level 1 students who should have a teacher in front of them. Just want to duly make my point, huh, Dave? Same with Geiger. So those are 46 level 1 students. That's a significant amount of students to provide direct service to, especially if we wanted to ever consider a push-in model.
But would it be, if you had additional ed techs, obviously that would help that teacher with that student ratio, right?
It would help. It wouldn't do harm, if that's what you're asking.
And we would be within the law.
And it would be within the law.
Okay. And then one final question. So the numbers of new Mainers appear to be decreasing. Do you anticipate that we'll have the numbers are going to go down over the next couple of years, or do you have any thoughts on that?
I hadn't heard the data point that the number of new Mainers has gone down. The number of refugees we've received has decreased, although we're still receiving refugees. Typically, the new Mainers that we're seeing in Lewiston Public Schools are our Angolan families, and they are asylum seekers. They're not resettled refugees from an organization. They come here on their own.
Okay. So you're not anticipating any less numbers
No,
of students over the next
would
few
continue.
years?
I would anticipate that we would continue to add more
All right.
students.
Thank you.
That's typically how we've been going.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So maybe you can explain for those that may not be aware just how a student comes off the ELL count.
Yeah.
And how the changes may have impacted our numbers.
Yeah, so a student is considered, and this really is, so if we look at the level 3 numbers, those students who are in the mainstream 100% of the time, currently the only way a student can exit the ELL program, exit that status, and it's a state flag, is if they achieve it's now a 5.0 on the access assessment. So the access is the annual state mandated English language proficiency test. So just like it's part of the MEA system, if you will, it's just for ELL students. It measures their ability to use grade level appropriate academic language in listening, speaking, reading, and writing. So it's a 6-point scale. So students can get anywhere between a 1.0 and a 6.0. And the way the assessment has worked is you have to receive the past 2 years a 5.0 or higher in order to exit. It used to be a 6.0 in order to exit. So they use one data point to determine whether or not they are proficient in English. Typically in Lewiston, our level 3 students are those who are on grade level. We've actually had ELL students who are level 3 students at the high school in AP classes doing really, really well. They just, for whatever reason, couldn't get that 5.0 at that one moment in time. So sometimes those level 3 numbers are really, they're kids who we don't have any concerns about. They're going to a 4-year college, they're going to a top college. Like I said, some of them are in AP classes. We really don't worry about them because we know the only reason why they're in ELL is for whatever reason they may not be a good test taker. We have a couple kids who have test anxiety. I talk to their parents every year about it, and so they don't perform well on the test. But they are some of our top performers. And so that's why we really kind of focus on 1 and 2s.
Also, Mr. Webster, I believe, addressed on Monday that ELL is paid for by the state. Is that a separate fund, or is that out of the general funding formula?
So right now, ELL, which is part of Article 1, is funded essentially funded by the state. It's on the ED 279 on page 2. We get roughly 52% a premium for every ELL student. It is not at this point targeted funds, but periodically I've gone to Augusta to defend that 52% and not have it cut. And as I had mentioned earlier, there are certain expenses that are not charged to the ELL budget, which are related to ELL. Facilities would be one of them for sure.
So it's 50-50 roughly. Is that what you?
So by 50%, I mean if, and rather than me guess at the figures, I'm going to turn right to the ED 279. So on the bottom of page 1, the calculation is that the per student rate is $6,328 for elementary and $6,759 for secondary. So there's an additional over $3,000 that we get per ELL student in the funding formula. And if you look at it on page 2, that totals in the formula about $5,000. Now, keep in mind there's a local share and a state share on that. But if I go to, well, this is what I was asking the other day. Can we get a total of the ELL budget? So that, because right now the Article 1 number doesn't break it out. And we actually could maybe break it out on the E schedule, which just shows Article 1 in 2 lines. We could just have one of the line ELL. I think that would help the board and for anyone who raises that question, because there's this conventional wisdom by many that these students are costing us money when that's not the case. So that would help point it out.
Just out of curiosity for myself, we have about, well, we have 1,555 ELL students currently. What were, I mean, I don't know if you know this off the top of your head, but what were they last year and the year before maybe?
I don't, so roughly, I think it was around 1,400. Off the top of my head, we've roughly increased about, forgetting that, we've roughly increased about 100 to 200 kids each year, but that's kind of a floating number because as new kids enroll, sometimes kids exit, so it's a moving target, if you will. So that number 1,555, I even think has changed. I think we're down to 1,554. So we're down 1. But then we registered 5 kids today, so we'll be up some. So we're at 34. It's quite a few. Yep.
In my day, when I was an ELL student 40 years ago, I only spoke French, and I remember my friends to this day remember me playing on the playground having no idea what I was saying, but I was the only ELL student in my classroom that I could remember, and I did not have any of these services, just a resource room. So I really appreciate the work that your staff and the direction that you provide them. And in 40 years, we'll see this community and this board being an entirely different community in Lewiston because of the efforts you put in our school district. So thank you.
Thank you. That'd be great. And just so you know, there's a lot of research to show that people who are bilingual are more intelligent and actually have more gray matter in their brains than those who are monolingual.
There you go. She's
So-
flattering me now.
So you got it. Thank you all.
Mr. Chair, I have those ELL numbers you were asking about. So these were as of October 1 and were part of my presentation on Monday night, or they were behind the percentages. So as of last October 1, the number of ELL was 1,555. The prior year was 1,447. The year before, so this is 2015, October 1, was 1,318. The year before that was 1,211. The year before that was 1,190. And I think, you know, that growing trend was typical of the prior period as well.
Thank you for that information. We'll move ahead with item still continuing on item number 2, agenda item number letter B, with special education, presented by Director Pam Emery.
I can't believe I had to move that mic because I'm taller than Hillary. Megan is passing out the handout that I will be reviewing today. I have already submitted electronically to you the template that was created so you can have an overview of what special ed looks like in each of the buildings with the classroom caseload identified. I have also submitted for you a description of each of the programs that special ed has to offer in Lewiston. The role of special education is to ensure that all students are receiving a free and appropriate education in a specialized fashion. We are doing that with the staffing that we have, our dedicated staff of teachers, ed tech, BHP, our office support staff, our specialists, as well as our building leaders in special ed. So I do want to take this opportunity. They have all come tonight to support their buildings and the programs. Sandy Finley is not here tonight because she is very sick, so she let me know. I just want to introduce Megan Angelos. She's our district clinical supervisor. She oversees all the emotional ED programs in our district. On the side of her is April. You have met her already. She is our WELL AP, who also does special ed. Deb Davis is our out-of-district coordinator, and she oversees our out-of-district students that we work tirelessly to return back to school in the public setting. We have Ruth Joyce, our Montello special ed supervisor. Nancy Dwyer, the assistant special ed director. Kelsey Nato, she is our Geiger special ed supervisor. And then Courtney, she is two buildings at Martell and Longley. And then Lee, way back there, is our LMS coordinator. And I missed you all together. And Anna Matthew over here is our LHS supervisor. So they are in each of these buildings really supporting all of our students, as well as the teachers, the ed techs, the staffing, to ensure that all of our students are getting their needs met. So going on to, if you want to know my numbers from 2011, where they were, I'll just get that out of the way right now. LPS students from 2011, moving forward, we had 776 students identified in special ed. In 2012, we had 834. 2013, apparently stayed equal. We went down by 2 the following year. 2015, we had 902. 2016, we had 962. 2017, which I have to do a caveat. At the beginning of the school year, we had 999, and we are now at 1,023 who are identified in special ed. And these services range from consultation to speech to out-of-district placement. We have 61 special ed teachers in our district, and we have 218 ed techs, which is probably why Hillary doesn't have ed techs. We have 128 ed techs in our district, with 90 of them being highly qualified as BHPs. So they have extensive training to ensure that they're meeting the needs of these students. We have 31 specialists. Those are 3 BCBAs in our district, as well as speech therapists, clinicians, OTs, 1 PT. I'm missing someone. Anyone? Is that all of them? I apologize if I missed another specialist. So we do have 31 of those providers, 10 secretaries across the district to support the staff, and 11 administrators, which are those individuals that I introduced today. We have multiple programs that we oversee. We have the RISE programs, the day treatment programs, the FLS programs, K through 12.
FLS stands for?
Functional life skills. Our RISE program is Reaching Independence Through Systematic Education, and this is designed with applied behavior analysis model for those students. Key highlights. And so I'm going to just go through building by building the things that we're asking for. 2 things I just want everyone to keep in mind. If you see an unbudgeted position, those are positions that already exist today that because of an IEP decision, we needed a one-to-one, or because of our caseload, which was over either 15 in a self-contained classroom, or EdTechs were seeing more than 5 students, we needed to add additional staffing. So everything listed that says unbudgeted, those already exist today. So because it was after the budget season last year, I'm now adding those into the budget for this year. There are 16 of those positions. So really what I'm asking for is an additional 21 positions. So Farwell. I have to explain this a little bit. So one of the directions that we took this year was really looking at our functional life skills program and really enhancing what we provide to students. With that, we have provided additional training to some of the staff, and we did a pilot at Farwell in one of the classrooms, and we began a pilot at the high school. The high school, still a little bit of work that has to be done in that capacity, but at Farwell, we really it has gone extremely well for our K1 classroom, and for this next year, our goal is to then move that into the next grade level and continuing to increase the capacity K6. But we're going to do that gradually. And so the expectation of our K1 now will be, they will be BHPs. They will attend every additional training that the expectations are of the RISE program, which is very systematic on what they're being trained in. And they will also be trained in therapeutic crisis intervention. So those are the 3 expectations in addition to what they already are doing. These are things that they would receive. We are also asking for 2 new resource room EdTechs. These are for the inclusion support that we talked about in our workshop over the weekend, or when we got together, the presentation with Amanda. So those are the EdTechs that would support doing that model. Geiger. We did cut in our proposal, and later on I will talk about the positions that have been cut from the budget already. And we want to convert one of the positions that was approved at the school board earlier this year. We are still requesting the 3 BHPs that would support those students who have behavioral concerns, and they would be trained as at the BHP level. In addition, we have a clinician who is working at Geiger whose capacity is, her caseload is higher than the expectation for
her position. So we're requesting an additional social worker to assist in that. We are also asking for 2 additional ed techs in the resource room, and this would assist in differentiating instruction for students at varying levels in their academics. I'm skipping Longley only because those are unbudgeted positions that were already there. McMahon, we are requesting to build a self-contained classroom. That's actually in Louis' budget, the facilities budget, so you'll see that later. Also, in addition, is a special ed social worker. They do not at this time have a special ed social worker that is assigned specifically to the mainstream classrooms. The only ones that are there at this time are those associated with the day treatment. We are also requesting a stipend for a lead clinician to assist in the day-to-day running of the building. Self-contained room for grades 3 to 6. Right now they have a K3 classroom, and our hope is to create a 3-6 classroom, which would then enable us to expand who can stay at McMahon, as well as look at the opportunities to return students back to McMahon. That would include 1 teacher and 3 BHPs. Montello, they are also at capacity on their caseload for social work services. We are asking for an additional social worker to meet the needs of the students who are not in their self-contained program. LMS, we are having 9 students rise up to LMS for their day treatment. Right now, their capacity is to hold 10 students in that classroom. They will be over that capacity with the move-ins of those students. We are asking for 3 new BHPs to support that classroom. And later on in the budget, so this happened after I submitted my budget proposal, we are requesting to convert a RISE teacher into one of the day treatment positions. So it's just converting the position, not the person, but the position. Also, another social worker for special ed to meet the needs of those students with an IEP. LHS, we have also moved into Star Academy. We started the co-teaching model at the high school and provided summer training for our teachers in order to establish that. Both gen ed and special ed met over the summer. We continued doing book studies. At this time, 2 teachers are working diligently providing that services with some general ed staff, but we moved one of our co-teachers to Star Academy, and they are really functioning very well and created a process there as well for our special ed students. Our FLS classroom, last year, we requested an additional FLS teacher because at that time we were beyond capacity. We had more than 15 students in each of the classroom, which is the regulations for that program. At this time, those numbers have dropped dramatically, and so we're requesting to convert one of the FLS teacher position into a RISE position, which you'll see that at the end of this handout. So those numbers in March calculated those numbers again and changed what I was requesting. So I have that amendment at the end. We are increasing the numbers of the students rising up to the high school, so we are asking for 1 additional BHP for RISE. We are converting 3 of the 1-to-1 positions that already exist into BHP positions for RISE, and we're taking 1 FLS ed tech position and converting that into a RISE position. So that's how we're looking to fund those pieces. and we want to continue working on co-teaching and using that model and using inclusion as much as possible. I know Farwell is going to pilot that piece next year, but our hope is to do that more of that moving forward in the future. Number worlds. That is something that we're requesting across the district. It was a training that we brought to all the teachers in the district, the special ed teachers. We invited the coaches as well to the training, and we just really had positive responses from the staff that they really wanted to explore this, and they thought it would be beneficial not only for the special ed, but also for interventions with RTI. So that is something that's on the budget for everyone. Another piece is the stipend for a Special Olympic coordinator. This is something that we have done every single year, and it has been very taxing on one of our supervisors since she has been the representative for the entire district, which is April. So we would like to expand that to offer it to a teacher and asking for a stipend that they would be able to oversee what that can be, because there's a lot of time and energy that is put into that position. So that's an overview of what I'm requesting. Items that we did cut from the budget prior to coming here. And these are, it says order of priority, but order of priority within the building itself. So Farwell, as I said before, April is an assistant principal as well as specialized supervisor. She does have very specialized programs which are in her building that does take a lot of time, as well as the building administrator piece. So the request was to look at having a full-time special ed supervisor. That, and I believe you received a proposal previously, maybe not. It identified okay, never mind. So one of the things we were looking for.
It was cut before it hit the board.
So you didn't see that. So one of the pieces that we were looking at is expanding the RISE program at Farwell, because we have students who are moving up to third grade and really wanting to make sure that Farwell students could remain at Farwell. And part of that, looking into it, we were looking at how then can we support April's position to be able to support all of the programs. So that's why that one's first, then RISE teacher position. In addition, the original proposal, I had asked K-12 to look at increasing the increasing the amount for all of our functional life skills ed techs to become BHPs, which would have them participating in all trainings. They would have the three, I used to call it the stool, they would have the three legs of the stools. So they would have to have the BHP certification. They would have to participate in all the training, which is monthly, as well as over the summer, all the additional meetings that occur weekly. And they would also have to do the therapeutic crisis intervention. So that is not something that remained on the table at this time. It's just the one spot at Farwell. Geiger, a self-contained classroom we had requested previously, as well as an additional resource room at Tech. At Longley and Martell, this is something I've requested each year. It is splitting the positions of a Longley supervisor and a Martell supervisor. I think based on the presentation of the students in both of those buildings and the ability to be in two places at once, which is not possible, it's really hard to be able to do the work that's needed to be done at both of those programs being in separate places, to support the students and to support the staff, as well as supporting our supervisor who's running in all directions. So that is something that I continue to request, and that would be a priority for me. LMS and LHS, what I said earlier about the K-12 wanting to increase the stipend or increase the expectation for the ed techs, that was also there. So I would like to continue to explore that as we move forward. And so that's what I asked for. The last thing on the page is the budget adjustments, because this happened after we presented the budget. It's just a conversion of the positions that already exist. So the LMS RISE position teacher would become an LMS day treatment teacher position, and the FLS teacher position would become a RISE teacher position. That would split between LMS and LHS.
If I could just interject here, special ed has its own budget article, so everything in Article 2 is special education.
Any further discussion from the board? Ms. Hutchinson?
I have a couple of things. At the high school, the resource room, do you have the numbers?
In the research room, on your template, the flow chart that I created.
Sorry, it's hard for me to see the screen.
Okay, I do have it. Hold on one second. I was told I could only have certain pages. I went overboard last year. So LHS for resource room, and so this is a lovely handout of each of the buildings. So each box symbolizes a classroom. So resource room, we have 19, 23, 21, 20, 20, cross that, 18, 20, and 27.
Okay, so you want to take one of the...
Functional life skills, different classroom together, all together.
Right, but what I'm seeing is, let me find it. You want to convert one resource room teacher to a STAR teacher.
They're already there.
They're already there.
They're already there.
So
So
it's
we're,
not taking away from our...
it is not, it's just converted, it's moving him into the right position.
And at McMahon, is there space for another self-contained room?
There is. So prior to doing any of the proposals, all the building administrators walked around their buildings to see what was available and what they could make available by next year. So everyone has given their input on their ability to do that. It's going to be hard, but they have the ability to do it, even if it's a bathroom.
Okay, and the last thing, on this Numbers World curriculum, I'd love to see some more information on that.
I can supply you it. I have a lovely big presentation in my office that you can come and visit.
Just one quick question. The 11 administrators that you have, do they oversee all of the staff above that? So all the teachers, all the clinicians, and the ed techs?
Megan, our district clinical supervisor, does oversee all the clinicians, so that's special ed and gen ed, and everyone else oversees the teachers and the specialists.
So those 11 oversee all of your staff?
Mm-hmm. And Deb oversees the programs, the outside programs, not staff. She's the out-of-district coordinator. So minus one of those 10.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let's see, a couple of questions. First, just I was having trouble finding it in the detailed book. What's the cost for the Special Olympics stipend?
And it's broken out throughout the district because they would help support each of the buildings. Right now it has been, April has been doing it, and the high school has taken on a piece of it, but we want one person to be able to organize all of those pieces. Every building needs to have a coach, but we need someone to be central to be able to organize all those pieces. And I know April has information on what that role actually looks like if you have questions about that. Or
No.
you just want the amount.
Yeah, no questions about it.
Okay.
Yeah, it sounds like a great program, just so we have the number.
Mm-hmm.
The other question I have is, so the special education enrollment's been going up quite a bit in the last few years. Quite a bit might be an understatement for you. To me, which is a sign that we're doing things right here. We have a good special education program, and so we honestly should be very proud of that. Of course, the state doesn't always give us enough money and quick enough time, of course, which can cause some challenges. But thinking down the road in the next couple of years, do you imagine any big changes in the district, in the special education department? Anything that you may come to the maybe future school committees with, hey, we really want to try out this, or try this new thing to address this issue? Anything come to mind?
I think our big piece is our co-teaching model and being able to do more inclusion throughout the district. I think that is a direction that we really should be looking at as a district. I know this year Functional Life Skills has been a program that we have been really looking at, like the nitty gritties of what does that look like, and moving up all the way to high school. What does that program look like for those students going out into the community? This year really worked hard on bringing them out in the community. The students, 1,200 for this second. So they have jobs set up, community providers that the staff have been working on, and the staff at the high school doing this program are absolutely amazing, and they're willing to do 150%, and they call me and say, tell me what you want me to do, and I'm going to do it. So they're fantastic. So really looking at how we implement the Functional Life Skills program is a big piece. So that'll be our summer project on how and we're going to do a backward trend, like this is where we want it to be for our seniors and fifth year students, and then working it backwards on how do we then get them there. So that's going to be a big piece that we're looking at. In addition, our RISE program, looking at merging the worlds of our RISE and our FLS programs, and really being able to look at the training that is encompassing those programs and giving it to all our staff. One of the big things that we did this year is have training throughout the course of the year. Every month we're meeting with all the case managers, whether it's about behavioral interventions, if it's about how to write an IEP, goal writing, but really valuing training our staff so they are ready, because these students need us, and it's all students, it's not just special ed, but just valuing what those trainings are for those students to get them ready.
Well, I think this question might be, maybe it's you I would ask. There's a lot of talk about co-teaching, but no support for co-teaching for ELL. Can you talk about why the difference between the two populations? Hillary was saying that that's not really supported, that they would need a lot of training, yet that's not happening, but it sounds like it's happening for special ed.
So special ed has been in Lewiston longer than ELL. The ELL program has been growing significantly and changing, and I think that we may just be a little further along with special ed. I think there's more evidence out there in regard to special ed. But even in special ed, we know that without adequate training, it could be worse for students, not better. You need compatibility between two teachers, and they really probably ought to spend 2 weeks in the summer together, and those funds have just not been available to do that, as well as having ongoing training over the school year. So we've been trying to attack it more piecemeal, and also with staff that have been open to that, and so there are some rooms doing it, but it's one of those things that we know in theory it's where we want to go, but in practice it if not done correctly can make things worse rather than better.
And I think that's a big piece, is it really is a marriage, and you have to find those two individuals who are willing to work together. And that's why I talk about the high school. We had great visions, and we did do the summer training, and we had the book study, and we all sat together, and we had all the teams of the high school, gen ed and special ed, sitting together, and people volunteered to be able to do what we were going to do and offered stipends. But it really is about that relationship, and you have to build a relationship that can work together, building curriculums together, talking together, meeting together, and it's very intense, and having that ability to do it well, which is, at this point, I think we have one team who's doing it really well, because of the capacity and all the initiatives that are happening right now as well. So you kind of have to pick the right one so it's really solid, and then branching it out and making it better.
Let me just add one thing. I actually texted Amanda Winslow while Pam was talking because I think she's the principal at Farwell. And so I wonder if this is something where we could do a joint pilot with ELL and special ed. So you saw me on my phone, I was texting Amanda Winslow.
And we've been united forces, ELL and special ed. We're out there. We want to speak to everyone about the wonderful world of ELL and special ed. And Lewiston Public Schools, of course. I was told I was not allowed to cheer up here.
Well, thank you for your presentation. I might add that as soon as we make space available, it seems we fill it in as quickly as the space is available, and that's definitely an asset to our community here, our city. It does save us approximately, I think, $30,000 roughly than outsourcing it. We have great services throughout the area that we do outsource, and that will never go away. But it does show that there are folks even moving to this district that see the quality and the level of quality of work that we provide our students in the school system itself. So thank you for providing that, and thank you for the information you provided us. Thanks. Still in section item number 2. We'll go to section 3, and one of my favorite parts that involves technology, but student and staff support. And Sue Williams is presenting.
So the agenda was a little unclear. So student and staff support includes a number of different areas, some of whom Sue Williams is responsible for. She's prepared to present. Dave Terry was going to present on technology later. And I'll just confirm with Sean, are there any other presentations? So it's those two.
There you have it, folks. Thank you, Sue.
Okay, I'm hoping what I have to present is a little more straightforward and in some ways easier to digest than the last 2 presentations you've heard. But you don't have, what you're going to hear about is not a long list of staff and staff needs, but really a few of the areas that are coordinated for our entire district out of the curriculum office. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our educator effectiveness, gifted and talented, and K-6 unified arts programs that are coordinated out of the curriculum office.
Excuse me, Sue, I know there's a handout,
Yes, there
electronic. Do you have a hard copy of that handout for the board?
Not without my notes on it, no. But that's okay, if you don't mind some scribbles here and there.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank
go
you.
ahead. I'm sorry, I thought it was in the
3-hole
packet.
punch, Sean.
Yep, I thought it was in the packet. Don't mind my scribbles. So, the first I'll talk about, I'll go without notes, is our educator effectiveness area that's coordinated out of here. Educator effectiveness goes far beyond just thinking about teacher evaluation or principal evaluation. It's really a coordination of efforts between and among those of us here in the curriculum office, myself, Karen, Pam, Hillary, all of the principals and the entire ad team, as well as a lot of the teacher leaders that are out there. The real purpose of educator effectiveness is to make sure that our teachers have all of the supports they need, including ongoing feedback on some rigorous standards for effective practice, and the supports they need to make sure that they're able to provide our students with the best possible instruction they can. So under that umbrella, there's really sort of 3 areas. One of them is sort of assuring that teachers have the feedback and the supports that they need, that our evaluators themselves have the supports they need to make sure that they are providing that feedback to teachers. So training of evaluators, calibration of their efforts to make sure that everyone is seeing the same things in classroom and able to provide that feedback to teachers so that they can improve. For our teachers, we're really looking at the entire continuum, how we onboard and induct our teachers and really develop them right through their time here at Lewiston Public Schools. Another piece of that as well is our surveys that we do. In the past, we've done a student perception survey, which was really students sort of providing feedback on their experience in an individual teacher's classroom. This year we shifted from that to a student climate survey where students are providing information about their experiences in the school as a whole. And so they'll be asked a series of questions that ask them to think not just about an individual teacher, but all the adults I interact with in the school and all of my experiences here. So those are sort of the three big areas that we cover under educator effectiveness. They're huge areas and they sort of involve so much of the work that's done by so many people in this district. We've also added a new survey this year called the Family Survey. It's actually being distributed now through our parent-teacher conferences. The high school, it was distributed electronically, and to those parents for whom we didn't have an email, we are having paper copies delivered in their DA session this week, so parents will have an opportunity to provide some feedback on their experience with the schools that their children attend. So those are sort of the big areas that you'll find under educator effectiveness. It's hard to capture all that happens in these three bullets, but some of the highlights, we do have a new item. It's a $500 stipend for a teacher to serve as a facilitator for our professional learning day, our teacher-led professional learning day. I facilitated that work this year with a fabulous group of really dedicated, hardworking teachers who put on, who really organized and coordinated a spectacular learning event for the teachers of Lewiston, teachers teaching teachers during that day. I'm not a teacher. This is a teacher-led sort of event. It also required some time over Christmas break where whatever wasn't finished was sort of handled by the curriculum department here. And we really wanted a teacher, first of all, to be sort of the lead on that with some coordination for curriculum, but also to provide a stipend for the time that a teacher might spend in their off-duty over vacation in order to prepare for the January workshop day. So that's a new item, just to sort of have a teacher be more of a leader in that way. We've also making a shift this year from the Randa Tower platform that we've used for our evaluation data management for the last, I think it's been, 6 years? We've used Randa Tower for our evaluation data. That's where all of the evaluation data that's collected through observations is organized and managed. All of the forms that teachers use to record their growth measures and their professional goals is all managed in one system. We are shifting from that system for a number of reasons. One, the most important of which is that Randa hasn't really evolved technologically the way some of the other platforms out there have. It's a bit clunky. It provides a great way for principals to organize and align the evidence, but then going back in requires lots of different steps, and it hasn't really evolved. Frontline is the system that we're looking at now that provides a lot more features, some real-time data analysis for principals that's not currently available, and for teachers as well. It helps manage the data more appropriately. Frontline also is being offered to us at the same cost as Randa is. You'll notice in there that I put that it's the same cost as Randa is costing us now, but included in that is $5,000 for pre-configuration and sort of startup costs. That will come out in next year's budget. So we'll actually have a more efficient and effective evaluation data management system for both teachers and principals at a lower cost for Lewiston Public Schools. Also included in that is a video calibration platform. There's 100 videos that are in there that of all different levels that have currently been calibrated and scored to our rubric, and it can be used to help train evaluators and provide some ongoing calibration work. So you'll notice the things that are not in the budget in order of priority are currently our surveys are done by an outside vendor called Cambridge Ed. They manage all of the production of the surveys, putting the surveys together for us. The family survey done on paper represents a lot of linking the surveys to families so we can track demographics, barcodes, but also a way to keep it so that that data on the surveys, so we can track demographics, but it still remains anonymous who the families are. All of that information is held by Cambridge, and they provide us with dynamic reporting on how the families are responding. And the same thing for teachers in our staff climate survey, which I forgot to mention above. So they provide dynamic reporting for us that we can aggregate and disaggregate based on school, based on populations of students, and it can be used for us to reflect on school improvement from 3 very important stakeholder views. We've eliminated that. We took that out in this first round, thinking that, Dave Terrio and I would work together to figure out how can we do that in-house. Some of the concerns around from stakeholders include to be sort of that confidentiality. People think somehow we're going to go in there and trace IP addresses, and they're concerned that they can't necessarily be honest about their feedback. So we're going to work on ways to, at a cost savings, if that still remains out of the budget, to see if we can't manage that locally, knowing that we have some of those challenges. Another challenge in that is that some of the items that we currently use in the survey are proprietary to Cambridge Ed. So we would have to change the wording, and that would affect our ability to do apples to apples comparison from year to year to see if some of the improvement plans we're putting in place are actually having an impact. Also, we were planning to add another TPEG facilitator at the high school. TPEG facilitators serve as a real valuable resource for their peers in the building. They aren't just people who explain how to move through the TPEG process, our teacher evaluation process, but they also provide real-time peer support to individuals in a building. If I'm going through the evaluation process and I feel that the only person I can talk to about the process is my evaluator, then that's kind of a precarious, insecure position I might feel in, especially if I feel there's areas I need to improve in. TPEG facilitators are peers that people can go to talk about their process, and also they're aware of all of the resources that are available for teachers as well. So a teacher can go to them and be connected and get a better understanding of how not only the evaluation process works, but other resources that might be available to help them improve their practice. We were going to add another one at the high school because there's it's a very large staff, and over the last few years, we have a fabulous TPEG facilitator who's up there now, but her workload has increased greatly with, we've got our Star Academy folks and others, and it's just, we found that her workload really required an extra person, but we did pull that out in anticipation of needing to do some reductions. So that's our educator effectiveness budget. The K-6 Unified Arts is also coordinated out of the curriculum office. The salaries for those positions are actually at the individual buildings because those individuals are on staff at those buildings. What we coordinate in the curriculum office is sort of the materials and the supplies and stipends, for instance, for our band and our orchestra. Our band and orchestra leaders for their time they spend outside of the regular school day working with students. Our PBIS, our Positive Behavioral Interventions and Supports, is also coordinated out of the curriculum office from the standpoint of materials and instructional supplies. So UA hasn't changed a whole lot. You won't see a lot. You'll see a lot of budget neutral information here. We do have one new item, which is $400 in PBIS materials and supplies at the middle school. They didn't currently have that available to them. Jana was finding money.
PBIS is?
Positive Behavioral Interventions and Supports, yeah. So PBIS is a program that is really designed to help schools set some common expectations for student conduct and the way the community interacts with one another. It helps to put a positive sort of proactive approach on student behavior and community building. You'll see when you go into elementary schools, be respectful, be safe, be responsible, and those are some key pieces that students can latch onto. And there's lessons and other materials that teachers use to sort of reinforce that in their classrooms as well to set some common expectations for behavior and conduct. So the supplies for PBIS usually include different things for programming and materials that different buildings might want to use to implement PBIS or to highlight or emphasize it. Sometimes it's used for incentives or prizes or different items at schools for students through the behavior program. So there's lots of different ways those materials are used. The middle school didn't currently have that money in the budget, and so to keep it more equitable with what the elementary schools were receiving, they felt that there was a need for that, so we've included that. We did have to up our budget for professional services for instrument repair. We were far below, our budget was far below the actual amount, even at a discount. The instruments that are used by Zach Lampron for band are owned by the district and maintained by the district, so that students don't actually have to purchase or rent their own. And they need to be serviced, and it costs close to $2,500 a year to do that, and we were under budget on that, so that $1,800 is just to bring us in line with what it actually costs, even at the steep discount that he's given by our local repair place. We also had to increase our District 2 music festival expenditures because we have more students participating. So we budgeted them out last year. We had close to 30 students participating, which is amazing. So we just had to increase it. The fees also increased this year from $10 a student to, I believe it was $12 or $13 a student. So there's nothing that was cut. You can see there's just some of those smaller items that we really put in to bring things up, either from an equity standpoint on the PBS or to bring ourselves in line with expenditures that are actually already occurring and that we've had to find other funds for. Finally, the last bucket is our gifted and talented programming. Gifted and talented is fully subsidized by the state if the costs are within the allowable range, and that can range anywhere from staff to supplies to tuition reimbursement for our GT teachers, our gifted and talented teachers. It doesn't include things such as technology, software, hardware, items such as that. So we try, each year we have to put in a report to the state with a budget of exactly what our program is going to look like, but really what's our budget for the year, and it gets approved. They look it over and tell us whether or not it's approved within those allowable costs. So the only things we budget for GT are actually costs that we know are allowable from the state. The challenge with GT is that our reimbursement is 2 years out. So the local budget has to support it for 2 years before reimbursements come back. So that's always a challenge, but we do eventually get the subsidies back, and we work hard to keep that within the allowable costs. We currently serve 147 students with 2 full-time staff members. We are required to identify and service the top 5% of our students as far as performance goes. So we screen each year to determine those students and identify them and provide those services. We also have a program called, it's the Androscoggin Valley Educational Collaborative. You'll see my scratches there because I kept forgetting what AVEC meant. That's a collaboration from the Androscoggin Select High Schools in Androscoggin Valley working together on enrichment programming, and Keith Levesque he runs that out of the high school. So in addition to K-6, those are also allowable costs under GT, so we do support some of those enrichment experiences at the high school. So we are in the process right now of revising our K-8 identification process, because one of the screens we need to have for English language arts or for any area of gifted and talented is called the universal screen. That means a way that we can look at all students in our first glance to decide our pool for further testing to determine whether they qualify for services. That screen was our NWEA in the spring, and we know for reading, and we no longer will be giving that. So we're in the process now. It's offered really an opportunity for us to look at our screening process, to look at our identification process, and see what measures exist currently, what measures we might look for to add, how we might include some teacher input in different ways. So we're currently looking at a revision to our identification process because we've had to eliminate that universal screen. So we're working on that now. some of the highlights include that one of the highlights, it's not a budget highlight, but as we shift to this, we're also considering whether or not second grade represents an age where we should start providing services. We are looking at different models and research around starting gifted and talented services from third grade on, and possibly providing more consulting at the K2 level for those students. There's a real shift developmentally for students between second and third grade, and often providing those direct services from third grade on seems to represent better results for students, because at K2, the social development, other pieces that they're getting in the classroom with some support and consulting might be able to meet those needs. So I just wanted to make you aware that those are some of the things we're considering as we move forward. We did put in the budget, and it's an allowable cost, money for access to some online programming. We currently have a CELIS out of the high school, but we do have at least one, possibly two students at the elementary level for whom no gifted and talented programming we can provide is really meeting their needs, because they're performing at such a high level, yet they're only 9 years old. So we're trying to figure out how is it that we provide the academic and intellectual experience for these students that really match their abilities, but that really match their abilities, but keep them obviously within the elementary range and opportunities to interact with their grade peers. So we've put that in the budget. It'll become part of our plan that we put together this summer into the fall for our GT plan. We're looking at, it could cost anywhere from $300 for a student to take a specially designed course, up to close to $1,000. So we're really exploring different models for that. So that was the amount we put in, figuring that this one individual student, if this child had, 3 of those experiences over the course of the year, we wanted to make sure that we were able to budget for that. But we are still exploring options for that. That's also an allowable cost. Finally, one thing we did not put in the budget, but we're really looking ahead to, was a position, a gifted and talented sort of program leader position. This person would coordinate sort of the testing that happens across the district at K6. It would also help us provide a resource as we sort of look at opening that continuum and look at what are we actually providing and how do we provide instruction for those students that are already performing at the level 3 or higher in our standards-based system. How can they access that instruction? What are some strategies and resources they might use to reach beyond the standards that they're currently performing at? So we also have, at the middle school, we have over 20 students who don't currently receive GT students, even though they're eligible. Some of that is because of scheduling issues. Some of that is because they're taking honors classes and they find they need the study hall instead to sort of to do the work for their honors classes, and they don't have that opportunity. So we're thinking that this position can also help coordinate some with the teachers and the students to make sure that they have some opportunities for enrichment as needed, even though they can't access direct services. There you go. Questions?
Any questions or comments from the board?
How many gifted and talented teachers do we have?
We currently have 2 that serve 2nd through 8th grade. At the high school, between AP and other courses, we don't actually have a gifted and talented program at the high school, but we have 2 serving a caseload of 147 students right now.
Thank you. Can I ask other questions? Does anybody else have stuff? I have a lot of questions, but I'm going to do some research on my own about you went through the educator effectiveness, and I had to kind of look up some stuff while you were talking about TEPG, LEPG.
Oh, yep.
I'm not sure that everybody would know exactly what those services are for, if they're for teacher evaluations, and
I can answer that right now if you'd
Okay.
like.
Yep.
TPEG and LEPEG, those are just our district, and I mentioned educator effectiveness, but when you look at the TPEG, that stands for Teacher Evaluation and Professional Growth Program. That's our teacher evaluation. That's our evaluation system for any educator that's currently covered under the Teachers Collective Bargaining Agreement. So it also includes clinicians, it also includes guidance counselors, it includes social workers, social workers, clinicians. So anyone I think nurses are the only ones that aren't covered under that, of people who service our students in a professional capacity. LEPEG is our principal evaluation, or our leader evaluation and professional growth program that's used for our administrative roles.
And so you've been using a vendor to manage the data for that and to create survey questions that you use?
There's two different vendors here. So if we take our evaluation system, we have a vendor called Randa Tower now, and we're looking to switch vendors. And that's where when an evaluator goes into a classroom and they're observing, they're gathering evidence of what they're seeing. This system allows them to collect that evidence, align it to the standards, so it's all in one place for the teacher to see and the evaluator to see. It's also a place for them to kind of have interactions around that particular observation. It stores all of that data for us. It also includes our forms. For example, teachers also have to create student growth measures. So it has our forms for our student growth measures. It holds artifacts of professional practice, of things that go beyond the teaching that happens. For example, two areas of our teacher evaluation system include professional collaboration, which is one of our areas, and also reflective practice. And those aren't things that you're necessarily going to see on stage when you go into a classroom. So teachers often provide artifacts, or at times have conversations with evaluators about the work that they're doing. And this is a place that all of that can be captured, not just for conversations, but over time. And for legal reasons, we need to have that information as we're evaluating teachers. So it holds all of that data in one place.
That sounds excellent. I was just concerned because it said items not in the budget, 17,200.
That's the other vendor item. So we use Frontline and Randa that's our evaluator data. So we're looking at an evaluation data system for our educator effectiveness. Surveys are included under educator effectiveness because that data is used to inform school improvement and instructional improvement. That's a different vendor. That's really a data. They're a different type of vendor that's really designed to gather data from surveys. It's almost like a research firm that their area is designing surveys, looking at the validity of them, testing the questions, and helping us use that to design our own local surveys. Actually administer the surveys to stakeholders, and then the data goes directly back to them for them to crunch and provide us with the dynamic reporting that we need to reflect on and improve.
So if you cut that piece out, you said you and Dave are going to try to work on some sort of in-house. That seems like a huge thing to do. And then
it's a lot of work.
What would you do for the reliability and validity of the survey questions if you didn't have something that was already tested?
That's a very good point. Yes. Yeah. That's one of our challenges. Yes. Yep.
Thank you. Couple of comments. Well, and I have one more following Ms. Roy's question. I do think it stands out that you said there are only 2 gifted and talented staff members in the entire district. I've heard from a lot of parents, particularly at the elementary school level, that they'd like to see more opportunities for high-performing students. So, it stands out to me. So the board can look straight out listening to. Meeting. So, very
respond a little bit and put in a plug for some of the real enriching opportunities that are happening through our 21st century programs and our extended school day programs that are happening at our elementary and middle schools, such as the Odyssey of the Mind at the middle school. There's lots of opportunities. So we need to keep in mind that we will be subsidized and supported by the state to identify and service our top 5% of students. We're not really allowed to go beyond that within the subsidy, but there are, I encourage you guys to talk to Jen Carter and talk to some of our extended, school day program individuals throughout the district to sort of learn about some of these opportunities. Just because it's an after-school program doesn't mean that we're not seeking to really provide some of these enriching opportunities for students. So I agree with you. It's always, we want to have as enriching experience as possible during the school day, but do know there's individuals working really hard to make sure that students have opportunities beyond the day as well. I do want to say I'm happy to talk to any of you individually about the evaluation program if you're interested and you need more details about that. You can find me right in the curriculum office. Yep.
Any other discussion from the board? Seeing none, I wanted to say to you as well as to all our administration, you juggle quite a bit. I mean, quite honestly.
It's a team effort.
It is, and with what you just said, you talked about reports, software, training, continuing education, but one of the things that stood out that I enjoyed hearing from you are some key proactive words, and that included dynamic, climate, improvement, leadership, effectiveness, support, and enrichment. And it went on further than that, then solutions like proactive tools, materials, and instructional supplies all are key elements in making sure everybody's on top level training, effectiveness to go all the way through to our students. So thank you for providing that this evening.
You just summarized the role of the curriculum department. So thank you. Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Francis.
Thanks. We'll move to Dave Terrio.
Bobby. Me. It's me. Can we add to our list to look at the vendor issue, educator effective vendor?
The educator, or are you talking about the climate surveys?
The climate surveys, the 17,200. Yeah.
Yeah, so the surveys, using.
So I'm going to go ahead and get started real quick. Little background for some of you that don't know me. I actually have been. I think they made the oldest go last. I think that's what it was here. But basically, I've been around the district for 36 years, I believe now, and I taught history for 27 years as a teacher. So, and I give this background for a reason that I'll touch on a little bit later here. And then I became a technology integrator because my absolute passion was technology, even as a teacher. And I was in the classroom and had one of the first sets of laptops to come into the high school and be able to do all kinds of amazing things. So that's kind of what got me started. And then I went on and got my master's degree in educational technology. And then after 7.5 years of being a tech integrator at the high school, the position opened up here for the director of technology, or should I say director of instructional technology, which was really appropriate to my background. So I was pretty excited. So this will be I'll be finishing my second year this June. So the first year, as you know, is kind of like that blur where you're trying to figure out what you got to do each and every day. And then the second year, you kind of hit your stride a little bit and you start to be proactive about things. And I think what you see in this packet is an attempt by my department and myself to do exactly that, to be proactive about some of the things we're seeing that are on the horizon. In the in the process of doing this, I will be referring to the Barry Dunn report. And this year we had a group come in, Barry Dunn from Portland, and they came in and they did an assessment of our entire department. And so they met with teachers, they met with principals, they met with directors. They actually sat down with myself and my lead tech, Tom Seeley, who's our tech supervisor, and they met with all of my other techs. And they met with them and they got a chance to meet with them separately and have great conversations. So the beauty of it is they were able to put together a pretty comprehensive look at our department and really get some information from people without, in other words, influence from me or anybody else. And so I felt that was a really good piece. And in the end, they actually met with Bill and Sean and I, and we got a chance to sit in a workshop session and really look at what pieces we felt were critical pieces to address right away, and some other issues that are in that report that we will plan for the future to address. But one of the first things in the Barry Dunn report that we talked about was the whole issue about security in our network. We have made huge strides since last year on doing exactly that. I know that the subcommittee, we talked about that when we got together, and many got a chance to hear some of that. I know I talked with Mark just recently about some of those same situations, and I know Francis and I have had some conversations over time about some of these technology issues. But this one is critical. It's number one on my list, and I had to make a lot of cuts this year to our proposed budget. It's the way the budget is this year, and I understand that everybody has to make some hard cuts. And technology took their fair hit. And so when you get to a system administrator position, that's the position that is, in essence, a security officer for us. We don't have that position per se right now. I have a tech support specialist who's actually handling all tier 1 tickets that come through, and we take technology and we talk about it in tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. Tier 1 is your everyday, I've got a problem with my computer, it's not working, can you come help me, that type of thing. Tier 2 is you're moving up the chain now. Now you get something that may be a software conflict that takes a little bit more understanding, research, so forth, and you might need somebody who's got a few more skills to do that. In Tier 3, you have the top guy. You got the guy who really runs the show. He's into your network. He knows what's going on in the network and so forth, and he's the one that probably sits down with the toughest of all problems and uses all of the skills and experiences he has to find a solution for you. We're lucky, we're blessed, we have that guy. His name's Tom Seeley, and he does an amazing job for us. So the issue now is, however, I've got a tech support specialist who's already for a year and a half now been doing some of this position as a system administrator, but he can't do it all. He can't handle all the tier 1 tickets at LRTC and Lewiston High School, and also have eyes on our network and our servers, constantly, because when we have intrusion attempts, viruses, those types of things, sometimes you need to act quickly to take care of those situations. You have to see it when it's happening to realize where it's coming from. But you also, other times, it's don't react quickly. It's take your time, study what's going on, listen to what's coming out from online, and figure out, wait a minute, maybe this one's we wait and see because we don't want to change things and cause ourselves new problems. So there needs to be somebody who's actually up on top of these things, who's researching this and knows this. For an example, we have had attacks we've seen from the Russians, Chinese, another one, Netherlands is another one, and Serbia. And all of these countries have had attempted, we've had some attacks. Luckily, we've survived those. We had things in place that protected us. We still have concerns, and we're so forth, and we're working to always make it a better situation. But those are the types of things we see. When I hear things, and Tom hears things, and we hear things like WannaCry, Spectra, Meltdown, Silent Bob. Those are all terms that keep us up at night, thinking about what those vulnerabilities can be. We absolutely, as a district, have to have this position of system administrator in place to take care of those things and to be there when those types of things are happening. We have grown as a district over the last few years, and also the types of threats have grown nationwide and worldwide. So, you can't really pick up a newspaper every day without that. So if there's anything in the tech budget that I think is that important, it's this position here. Beyond that, I'll move to the next one, which is the Tier 1 Tech Support Specialist. As we grow and we talk about the real numbers of students that are coming into our district, the increased number of staff members that are being hired, and I think I saw 67 positions the other day was a potential in the budget, as proposed at least. In all of the other positions that were hired last year, there has been no increase in Tier 1 tech support over that period of time. Every single one of those teachers, every single one of those students coming in are going to be using technology, and they need training around that technology and need to support when their technology doesn't work. We are at critical mass. We do not have enough tech support specialists to handle the tickets that are coming in now. We are feeling badly on our end when the tickets come in and they don't get handled as timely as we would like them to be handled. So this is at the point where what's happening is I've got techs that are working so hard trying to get to teachers' tickets, to administrators' tickets, to Dingley, to a lot of schools, and they just feel overwhelmed, and it's really, to be honest with you, potentially leading to staff retention for the technology department because they're feeling overwhelmed. And what they really want to do is be out there solving those problems for teachers and feeling good about what the teachers are saying back to them about thank you so much for that support. That was really great. You got me back up and running. I cannot have a director at the Dingley building down for 2 and 3 hours because I'm trying to get a tech from someplace to come over and serve them. So that's why this position is so critical. We've had to take on support for Dingley. We've had to take on support for Star Academy that originally we weren't even supposed to have to take on. It was supposed to be done by Pittsco, the company that set up the systems and so forth through the grant. We now own all the materials, so we had to inventory all the materials. We found out later on, after it was done, we had to inventory all the materials. We found that there was no antivirus installed on any computer over there, so we had to immediately start working on getting that done. So when you have that dropped on your lap and you have the same size workforce, it's pretty intense to find the time to get in there and get that stuff done. So that's why I'm kind of really making sure that I mention these things. I got elementary techs who work in 2 buildings. They each have 2 buildings that they're responsible for. I went in and I pulled the numbers for those different buildings. Between these 3 techs at the elementary level, they have 1,100 to 1,250 end users that they support. The average statistic I looked up was 600 per person, 600 end users per person is the average. They even made, in the article, they made a statement about 900 being, oh my God, that's extreme. And we're up around 1,100 to 1,250. And they work hard every day, and I've got a great team, without a doubt, but they just need more support, and that's the issue. Also, this position would also allow us to provide some training with maybe having a Tom Seeley come down and work with some of those other techs and train them to improve their skills so they could even maybe get some things done faster. Who knows? But that's why that second position is so important as well. If you would flip to the last page of the green boarded handout, just to show you some of the numbers that support this, the graph that you see there. Just look at August, September, and October of 2014. 400 tickets in August, September, and October. Now, a ticket can take somebody who walks into the room 15 minutes sometimes. Other tickets, they walk into the room and they are given 5 laptops that aren't working for whatever reason, various reasons. They now have to take those 5 laptops back to their office or wherever they can work, and they got to start working on those. Sometimes those 5 computers, to figure out what's wrong with them, to get them re-imaged, to do whatever they got to do, it can take anywhere from 1 to 2 hours. Until finally they can bring them back and put them in place for students to use. You start looking at some of the tickets taking that long in with some of the ones that are a little bit quicker. It takes time. And it can be overwhelming, especially if they get, the magic one I hear all the time is, hey, you got a minute? And that's the one that doesn't even get recorded here. So, but that's life as a tech. We don't complain about that. The fact that they're asking us, we're like, thumbs up. That's great. So, and then if you go to September and October and August of 2015, you see that what's happening now is the peaks are staying a little higher. The peak is about the same, but we're staying up there a little higher. Just look at August and September and October of 2016 and look at the jump that happened there and how the tickets are now going up and trying to approach 600 tickets. Then you get to this year, August, September, and October, and we were all just scratching our heads going, what in the world's going on? This is just, we've got so many tickets, and we work hard every day, and then all of a sudden you look back and there's 70 more than, the next day or the next week, and you're like, how'd that happen? And it's just because of the sheer number of, we went 1-to-1 at the high school with Chromebooks, so we put all those devices in play. We did more with other elementary schools. We put some 6th grade Chromebooks down there. We even have one school that has a 5th grade Chromebook situation. So the more we do that, the increased demand is. So I really just wanted to show you some real data that tells you where we are as far as tech support in my district, in our district, sorry. Freudian slip. Been around a long time. Then finally, if we go to the second page, actually, you've got the SIS assistant. And SIS stands for Student Information System. And our student information system is PowerSchool. And when you look at, again, increasing numbers of kids, students, parents, all getting access to your grading program and so forth, and your data information system, we have an amazing guy that works that job for us. Doral Spence is unbelievable. I mean, his knowledge base is incredible. He's a guru at what he does. They're all over the state. People call him to ask him questions. And what does he do for us that's really remarkable is that he makes sure that every kid we deserve to have on our rolls is accounted for, and every one of those kids, as you know, comes with state subsidy. So that's money. And so that's why he's so important. But he can't do it all. He works weekends, he works nights, trying to get everything done that he needs to get. When it's at the beginning of the year and it's coming to the October 1st deadline for enrollments, he's buried. He's absolutely buried trying to get that done. Now, Sean, as head of curriculum, would go to him and say, gee, I really need this data because we need it to support instruction, or we need that data to send it to the state for whatever reason. And he goes that first September, October time period trying to get that data. It is times when Spence has to say, I can't get it to you right now. What's more important is making sure we get all the dollars we can get through our October 1 deadline. So that's times when he just is not able to do it. If he has to go away for vacation, and he's gone for a couple of weeks, and like everybody else, he deserves a vacation, especially as hard as he works. If he has to go on vacation, who's that person that's going to take over and keep the ship running while he's gone? Well, right now you're looking at him, okay? And my background is not in databases and the back end of PowerSchool and digging into that. My thing is, I got my plan, I work my plan. I know who I got to call in. I talk to my secretaries in all the buildings. I get them all squared away. I know who the players are. And then it may be a phone call to PowerSchool if should we go down and say, hey, we need one of your guys to come over here and get us back up and running, or remote in and whatever. But that's a cost. When you start calling PowerSchool for tech support, that's a cost. So we're looking at an SIS assistant that would be able to help with reporting a lot. And if you look down there, I've listed some other things that person will do, and be able to at least, and actually I'm going to flip over here, that person would have the ability to at least go into PowerSchool, keep us up and running while Spence is on vacation, be a point of contact. So with everything else I'm doing, to have them all calling me during that point would be very difficult as well. But this person would be there to answer the phone, be able to take care of minor issues, and have a sense of what the background is. The other thing Barry Dunn talked a lot about was redundancy, and real concerns around redundancy. If we were to lose a person in this key position, for say, and I'll talk about another key position in a minute, but if we were to lose a person in this key position, And they left, and that knowledge left with them. And we had nobody else with enough knowledge to keep us running and moving forward. We're going to take a hit, and we're going to really be in a position that's not a good position to be in. And then we may be calling in Power School, and then we're going to be maybe trying to keep afloat until we can hire somebody who can come in. And the scary part is I don't know if we're going to be able to hire somebody who really has the extensive knowledge that somebody like Spence does. But we'd have to do it. We'd have to hire, the candidate, the best candidate we could find. So I point that out, that I think that SIS assistant position is also very mission critical to making sure that we can keep things running in Lewiston Public Schools, especially when we're making a move to go to Power School Pro. So that's really something I think is very important. Next is, and it's a position that I think Mrs. Avery talked about a little while ago with you when we were talking about the Director of Facilities, Louis Turcott, myself. We are two directors that do not have an administrative assistant to help us with anything. We have, and I can give you an example. I mean, if you look at the types of things, the administrative tasks that we have to do as directors, we're talking about creating and processing all requisitions and POs. We have to, all hardware and software purchases, I have to take care of all of that within, research them, make sure that are proper purchases, and then put in all the proper forms and so forth to make sure those purchases get done. Next, all the invoices that come in. I take all those invoices, I make sure I go through them. Yes, did we receive these things? Is it ready to pay out? I have to sign it, put the account numbers to them, get them up to the business office, and make sure that all gets done. If I make any purchasing card purchases, I got to make sure that I have all my account numbers, and I have to write all the account numbers to everything and make sure that all gets done in a timely manner. And I got to tell you, I feel guilty each time because I feel like I'm trying to get it up there to Ann in the business office, and it's a tough thing to make sure I can get to her. And bless her soul, she reminds me in a nice way to get that done. So that's great. But all the employee timesheets, the mileage reimbursement forms, the vacation requests, the repair purchases, requests for those. Every new staff member in our entire district has to sign an acceptable use policy. I have to track all of that, make sure that every single person doesn't get an account until they get an acceptable use policy signed. And after that, I then have to forward it on to HR to do their piece with it. And then all the, of course, this one may stay under me, but it's RFQs, requests for quotes, requests for proposals, all of those things I have to type up and make sure that, I have everything in place for those. And then purchasing all the hardware and software renewals for district technology and software items, all of those things. And that takes a lot of the time. What happens sometimes is I'm sitting down in my office at my desk doing these administrative tasks when I talked about my background a little while ago. I had been a teacher for 27 years. I had a real understanding about pedagogy in the classroom and how teaching, what good teaching looks like. I have the ability as a tech integrator to be able to show you how exactly technology works in that classroom and how it can be effective in your classroom. I really need to be out there in the schools, working with the building principals, doing that portion of the job. It's far better use of my time than doing all the administrative tasks that I have forward. So that's the pitch for that, and I'll leave it there. But that would really give both Louis and I the kind of help we need to do our jobs better if we can. Next thing on the list is Longley teacher devices. Last year we pulled off a mind of miracle. We were able to not really ask for any more money in the budget, but use it differently to get the elementary teachers new laptops. They had been using the old white MacBook Airs that were 10 to 12 years old in some cases. And the best line last year was they were using laptops that were older than the kids they were teaching. So we said, enough's enough. And I went home one night and put my head around it and so forth, came in and saw Elaine and Bill the next day and said, I think I got it. I think we can do this, but the only school that we can't do is Longley. And the reason we didn't do Longley is because they had a MacBook Air that was 1 year newer than what the teachers at the other schools had. And we could keep them running one more year. So what we did is we took care of all the other 5 schools. Longley was the one school that needed laptops this year, so we kind of held them off for a year. And I got to tell you, they've been great. I thought I was going to hear a whole lot more screams than I did. And the Longley teachers were very patient. So that's in the budget this year. We're looking at going with the same type of devices that we went with for the other elementary teachers, which were Lenovo PC laptops that were like very similar to a MacBook Air, where they're slim, they 8 gigs of RAM, and an i5 core processor. So it's pretty decent, a decent machine, so that you knew when you got to the 4th year, or heaven forbid the 5th year, you still had a machine that was going to be able to do the job. So we kind of projected for the future a little bit with those. So that's what I have there. If you flip over to the next page at the top, we have the refresh of the LHS Chromebooks. We started the program 2 years ago. This will be our 2nd year in the program. And in our 2nd year in the program, we're now realizing that if we don't start the 4-year plan of renewing a grade level of Chromebooks each year, the program will not be sustainable. The cost will be, it will be to the point where we would have to go out to our LCIP again and have a huge number that we're putting, and then we have debt service on that. And so what we're really trying to do is make it sustainable within the budget each year, and to replace 400 devices is a grade level, basically. And what we would do was we take 250 of those devices. Chromebooks, we paid $165. They're going to go up next year, but this past year we paid $165. They'll last you about 4 years. Kids taking them home, wear and tear, back and so forth. They last about 4 years. However, we might be able to find some of them that, as we cull out some of them that weren't that great, we might find some that we can put down in an elementary situation for a couple of years, because they won't be going home anymore. And so maybe we can actually pull that off. So we're trying to make the best of what we've got. This year, if we don't do this year, that means next year we'd be staring in the face doing 2 grade levels at the same time. And then we're talking about quite a bit of money. If you look down at the bulleted items real quick, we want to maintain an adequate number of devices for the increased student enrollment. We want to see if we can prevent having to go to LCIP. We want to implement a sustainable replacement schedule to make that program a permanent program. And basically anything we can do with help equity down at the K-6 schools, we'd love to do that to make that work. So you can see where that kind of is. If we've made a commitment to technology in the district, and I really hope we're past the days of does technology belong in schools. I think we all realize now that it does. It is an important teaching and learning tool. And what we really hope to accomplish is that kids will be turning around and reaching for their laptop just like they would reach for a textbook. They reach for the right learning tool that they need that day for what they're doing in the classrooms. And so I think that's why it's so important that we make sure we maintain what we have. And then the next thing after that is talking about the position of network administrator. Tom Seeley right now is our tech supervisor. That doesn't even come close to what his role is. Tom is the guy who makes sure that, like I said, the network is up and running. Any issues whatsoever, he deals with it. He comes in on weekends. If there's any downtime, if we go down, Tom comes in and he gets us back up and running. He is got the mind of being able to he is so proactive in making sure we don't have issues that I think we forget all the things he does for us because of that. He took on, when asked, the school system was making a huge change to the phone system, where we went voice over IP a couple of years back. It was an incredible project. Tom Seeley single-handedly, pretty much, took on that project for the district, working with the vendor to make sure that the phone system was in place. Well, unfortunately, when you do something like that, there's carryover. And Tom's never got out of the phone system. Tom still works for every elementary school. They call, my phones are not working, or we need to put this number over to here, or move a phone, or whatever. Tom's that guy that ends up doing that as well. So with all of those jobs responsibilities, we're really asking that he get the correct title. He's reclassified as a network administrator, and we get him a little bump in pay for all the things he did. And if he was on the, literally, to be honest with you, if he was on the, if he left and went to the private sector, he'd make even more money than he's making here. But he understands what education's like, and that we have to use the money we have. So, so I really can't, that's important for the person that's working that hard. LHS teachers. Same deal as last year. We said, no, we're not going to buy any more student machines. We're going to take care of our teachers who have machines that are just so antiquated. We have to make sure that they have decent devices to work. And then next year, after we get done taking care of the last groups of teachers this year, or the year coming, we will be able to turn our attention to the elementary schools and to some of the other places where we have inequity around technology devices. And so the high school teachers, they've been using their MacBook Airs now. MacBook Airs, this is their 5th year with them. Going into next year, those laptops will be 6 years old. Again, kind of beyond where we would like them to be. Right now, we are seeing a situation where we are no longer part of the MLTI with those devices, so all repairs are on our own at this point. We have devices that are failing. We have increased numbers of teachers coming in at the high school. And so right now, or the last time I checked, very recently, there was 1 spare left at the high school. So if we had 1 teacher come in and say, my machine's broken, they'd get the spare, and then we'd have to send it out, the other ones send out to be fixed, or fix it ourselves. So that's where we are right now. We really are just kind of hobbling through this year to try to get to the end of the year, because we just don't have enough spares. And these teachers are ready as well to go on to a new device. I contacted Apple. I got a really great price at first. I was pleased. They tell me it might even go a bit further down if the MacBook Air drops in price, which we're going to cross our fingers and hope. But basically, with the second round of cuts, one of the things I had to do is I had originally put this in as a 3-year lease, because the state is going to give us, the DOE, if all the proper forms are filled out and we get a grant, they'll give us a grant for $200 per device for 3 years. So if you take a MacBook Air, and right now they're around $1,000, but they may drop, that's $600. That brings that MacBook Air down to $400. I don't think anybody can walk out this door and go to Best Buy or anywhere else and find a $400 MacBook Air. So that's the kind of deal we would get with the rebate. I worried about going to a 4-year, and the reason I worried about going to the 4-year is we could get in cheaply this year at $3,500, but the grant ends in 3 years, not 4 years. So we'd have a balloon payment in the 4th year of about somewhere $28,000 to $30,000. However, this is my proposal. We can get in at $35,000. We used to pay close to $50,000 for our lease with MLTI. We can get in at $35,000, and if in the next 3 years after that we paid $45,000, $45,000, and $45,000, we would be able to still be within the amount of money we used to pay for this lease, and we would be able to do the 4-year plan. I will hope if they drop the price, maybe we can back it back up to a 3-year lease and gain that way. Less interest and what have you. So that's kind of what my goal is, if that works and we can do it. But I wanted to make sure you knew about the rebate. The rebate is a great deal, but we still have to pay for it. So that's the situation there. Next, after that, we've got a conversation about hiring an E-rate consultant to assist Lewiston Public Schools in planning for technology needs. We had a consultant that came in. We talked to him briefly. Bobby actually was the one who was able to contact him and get him to come.
Could you just explain what E-rate is? I'm not sure board members would all know that.
Yep. So basically, the E-rate program is designed. There's 2 categories in the E-rate program from the federal government. It provides you with rebates for things such as broadband connectivity to your school, phones, those types of things. That's Category 1 items. And those Category 1 items, unfortunately, that percentage is dropping each year. We will not get large rebates over, broadband's still there, but as far as phones, that's dwindling. But the category 2 is staying for at least another year, is in full force. And what happens is we would plan next year, actually, this coming year, we would plan for the following year. If you look on the sheet where I've got down about maybe the third or fourth line, so what I should finish with the description of E-rate. What E-rate really does is if you buy equipment and your free and reduced lunch rate is quite high, then you actually are in line for a rebate if you submit all the proper forms. And it's a convoluted process. You got forms to submit. So having somebody to help you with that process really is going to save you money and help you make sure you get your bang for the buck. So what happens with the category 2 stuff? What is that? Servers. That is anything that runs your network infrastructure, switches, those types of things. So I could be it could be an $8,000 server that we need to buy. It could be what we refer to as some of the controllers, a SAN, we refer to it as, and some of the big components that are part of your infrastructure and your network. And so the last line kind of really explains where we are. Our CEP, which is our nutrition funding, basically we're at 99.15%. That's the highest you ever get for a rebate is 85%. So got that made. We've covered that by far. The amount of money that's actually available to Lewiston Public Schools in that following year is $817,000. $817,000. Thank you. 381. And when you look at that number, that's a lot of money. What's going to happen in the next 2 years? In 2020, the MLTI will no longer providing computers for the middle school, no longer providing for the network at the middle school. So if I'm planning ahead and thinking ahead as I am, that means we got to do a network somewhere along the line at the middle school. And the network is very expensive. If we can do that and have it E-ratable, we will get 85% of that money back to us. In anything that we spend. So if you look at my last line, it says on a $100 piece of equipment, we pay $100 up front and are reimbursed $85. So when you think of a server that costs $8,000 and you are going to get 85% of that back, it's totally in our best interest to go this direction. And the 1166.25 is really a small portion of what we can actually get returned on in our investment. So it's really in our best interest to do that. And then kind of try to finish up here a little bit. Recommended server upgrades. I made the statement last year. It was quite interesting. The statement I made last year was we had 1 out of 22 servers that were under warranty. Every other 21 servers were no longer under warranty. That's how old they were. They were bought refurbished, and they were 4 years old when we got them, and they were old technology, and now they're really in bad shape. So what we did last year was we bought 3 servers. That's what we could afford, so we bought 3 servers and started to try to improve that situation. This year we proposed buying 3 more servers, get 7 out of 22. One of the things we're starting to do, and again, kudos to Tom Seeley and other techs that have worked on this, we begin to virtualize now, and so that we basically can put 3 or 4 instances or more on a server so that we don't have a separate server for each one of those instances. Like one instance might be Power School. One instance might be Destiny, software for the library system. So we can now put those on virtualized servers, and then we don't need as many. And so we can get to the point where we get some things under warranty a lot quicker. So we're working at those types of things. Those are the things that we're trying to be proactive about. The next one to me is the one I call the no-brainer. It's $4,300, and that $4,300 is a one-time investment, and it's going to make sure that our elementary network is up to 10 gigs at each elementary school, and our entire district will be 10 gigs speed-wise, and that's real good. There are many schools that don't have that. Because of the phone upgrade, we were able to bring in some switches and so forth that allowed us to have that ability. And now we look at that and say when we come to standardized testing and where we have a big draw on the network, that $4,300 is going to be just a drop in the bucket for what the advantages we'll gain from having that kind of speed in our district. So that's a thing that really makes me happy that we're there. And again, kudos to some people working really hard in my department to do that. And then if we go down, the one big cut that I had to make in the budget that kind of really cut deep was having to cut Chromebooks for McMahon's 6th grade. We had taken the Chromebooks at the high school when we did the one-to-one 2 years ago. Last year, actually, the beginning of last year, we took those Chromebooks from the high school that we had for the 9th graders only, and we split them up and gave them to the 6th grades in the various elementary schools because they were 1 year old at that time. So they were still in great condition. We gave them to all the 6th grades except for McMahon. Why not? Because we didn't have enough to give them to McMahon, and McMahon was already still involved with the MLTI program, and they had one-to-one iPads. So we decided that they had one-to-one, we could give one-to-one to all the other 6th graders. But last year we tried to get McMahon Chromebooks for the 6th grade, and we just couldn't do it. So I put it back in this year and kind of really tried to hang on to that to the bitter end, and that was a difficult one. But in the last round, that's what I had to let go of. So, just in thinking if something does come back and we have a better situation than we thought, that would be a wonderful thing to put in for McMahon. And I think Amber Eliason would truly support that. Other items cut from the budget, you can look down that list. Because this year was so important, the positions I talked to you about at the beginning, because those positions were so important, I was forced to cut things I would probably not have wanted to cut for any reason. Needing desktops for replacements, projectors and bulbs are a real key item for our teachers to be able to, for instruction each and every day. And when those bulbs go, they're not cheap sometimes, and you got to replace them. And I was trying to get a little extra money in the repair budget for just bulbs and projectors. We have a repair budget. We'll have to stay really close to our repair budget, and I'll have to manage it as best I can to try and get us through the year. But there's just to show you how important those positions are. Those are the types of things that I felt I had to cut. So I'll leave it at that. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And you also have a copy of the Barry Dunn report, so I really encourage you to take some time and read that report. It really supports all of these items that I've talked to you about this evening.
Thank you. Any discussion from the board? Ms. Hutchinson?
So when did we take over the Star Academy technology piece?
Bill, was the start of last year. Start of my time here. I remember that because it was a busy time. So we took it over not this past September, the September before. Yeah.
And Bill, can you elaborate
One
on
thing
that?
that concurrent with that, we went one-to-one Chromebooks at the high
Absolutely.
school.
Yep.
And originally, we weren't planning on having Chromebooks for Star Academy.
Right.
But very soon thereafter, and Sean was principal at the time, it was clear we needed Chromebooks for freshmen. And so when we added Chromebooks to Star Academy, we actually no longer needed some of their computers, particularly in the ELA area.
Yeah, and we also we decided very quickly after that we needed Chromebooks for Lewiston Academy students that were coming after school and working and doing their education later on in the day.
If I remember correctly, we saved so much money by going to Chromebooks. We ended up getting more.
Clearly, it was we did it to be cost effective, and we really to try to go to another device would have been too expensive. Yeah. And I can tell you that when I go to the high school and I ask kids at the high school, and it's hands down, usually when I ask kids that simple question, are you able to do what you need to do to get your schoolwork done with the Chromebook? And their answer to me is yes. That's the response I get. Now, if you ask them if they wanted a Chromebook for their only computer, they'd probably tell you, no, I want a souped-up model for gaming and everything else. But a Chromebook suffices for what they need it to do for their homework. Yeah.
Which leads me to my question. Chromebooks. They seem to be working effectively. You're a Mac guy. I'm a Mac guy. You can see I'm using my own personal computer today, which is. But you mentioned MacBook Airs for the staff. Is that correct?
Yep. I have my budget notes on that question. I was ready for that one.
So, I mean, is there discussion about moving them to Chromebooks, or are they too attached to it?
I will be
attached to
very
mine.
honest with all of you that I will stand here and say to you that I do not believe, and Bill and I have had talks about this, I do not believe that a Chromebook would effectively allow a teacher to do the job they're being asked to do today. We have so many things we ask of our teachers. They can't install any other programs that they need on that device. Everything would have to be totally online. There is software that they install, whether it's for teaching and learning. Some of them are buying the software out of their own pockets to bring into their classroom for instruction and so forth. And if they don't even have the ability to install those on the device, that's difficulty. And so I've worked with them. I've been there. I've been in the trenches. 7.5 years as a technology integrator at the high school with the MacBook Airs at the high school. The devices we bought for the elementary teachers, I made real sure that they had the same innards in them, the 8 gigs, the Core i5 processor, slim in nature, because we didn't have the money to do 281 teachers at the elementary school with MacBook Airs without a grant for $200 per year for the devices. So I had to make the best call I could make and make it work. And so last year we went with those other, and they're nice laptops. They were not just an old clunky device that we gave them. I did that on purpose so that they would have something that equated. The MacBook Airs at the high school, the teachers have been using those for over 13 years. We have spent thousands of dollars on training around that device for those teachers. Those teachers have used the device, they're comfortable with the device, and with everything else we're asking them to do right now, and knowing in fact that we can get the grant from the state to make it work and feasible. I really strongly believe that at this point, and others may not agree with me, but at this point, I strongly believe that that's the way to go with these teachers and not create any more uproar at this point for those teachers.
Thank you for that explanation.
Yep.
So you caught my eye with priority number 9.
Okay.
$817,000 plus is very attractive. So we would get that rebate.
So what
funds.
my understanding, and Bobby can jump in here, but my understanding is that money would come back, and we're still new to some of this, but my understanding is that money comes back into the general fund. And when that money comes back into the general fund, there may be some other legalities around that as far as cost centers and so forth. But right now, my understanding is it comes back to the general fund. Do you have anything you want to add to that, Bobby?
So E-rate in this school district, we haven't taken full advantage of. And so one of the first things that I did in working with Dave when I first came on board here was to ask, are we utilizing all of our E-rate funds? And the answer was no. We were seeking reimbursement for telephone services.
Telephone, and then maybe a little bit of what we call dark fiber, which is very minimal. But other than that, E-rate in the district hasn't been done for a considerable amount of time.
So basically, essentially, that's leaving money on the table, especially where the reimbursement rate is so high to this district. So it would be crazy to do that, to continue that. So we did contact an outside consultant who I've worked with before, who's absolutely phenomenal. He manages the whole E-rate program for us. Ensures that all of our paperwork is correct, our I's are dotted, our T's are crossed. He seeks the reimbursement for us, tracks it to make sure that we're actually going to get it. So it's really a great program.
Well, that's fascinating. Thanks for the further explanation. I was thinking with the $800,000 there, we could actually hire someone in district to do it, but it sounds like it's all well managed, so thank you for that explanation. Who does our repairs right now?
Right now, as far as the Chromebooks, we remember way back, the previous board basically passed so that we could get the Worth Avenue group insurance for all the Chromebooks. So right now we have insurance up to $135 on each device should something happen to them. And that will run up in the 4th year. So we took it on a 4-year plan. My recommendation next time will probably not be to go to 4 years. It might be go 2 years. And I'll tell you why. It's because the price of Chromebooks keeps going up. And if you've taken out the insurance plan for $135, then all of a sudden you're not making out as well in your 3rd and 4th year as maybe you made out in your first 2. So maybe it's better to do 2 years and then stay consistent with the pricing and so forth. But right now we're doing okay with that. We put them in a box, ship them out, they repair them, they send it back. If it's a non-repairable item, when you're talking a Chromebook, they just give you a brand new Chromebook because it's not repairable to them. It's more expensive to them to repair it. Time, cost of components, everything else. So they basically cut us a check and send it here, and it goes back into the repair budget, and we buy a new device and put it back in place. So, yeah. And then as far as the teaching machines, of course, in the past with the MLTI, they took care of all of that, and it was part of the program, and we, shipped the things back to them. We have a concern about Apple Care. Apple Care is not as good for schools as it might be for the private owner who has a device and wants to protect it. They charge us, you can have 2 instances of accidental damage, but they'll charge you between $50 and $150 each instant. So you start tallying that up, and that's a considerable amount of money. So my proposal does not include Apple Care, because we're going to be paying Apple Care for every single device. If we take that same amount of money, we may get out of it cheaper doing it ourselves.
I guess I'll continue. So in the 400 new Chromebooks at the high school, I believe I understand this, but to let the rest of the board know this, because when you came to us, a year or 2 ago?
Yep.
A year ago, I think. The books were like under $200.
$135 was the original price. And then you've got to put on a $25 Google management license, and then the bags were like $23 something a piece for the bags. So when you put that together, I think we were up around what, $180, somewhere in there.
Right. Plus the insurance, right?
But the insurance, plus the insurance.
Yeah.
Yeah, we bought separately. Yeah.
Because here I divided that, and it was $273 per device. Does that sound right?
So if we get the rebate from the state, right, then the only thing that's not here right now is the insurance. The only thing that we don't have in this price right here is the insurance. And that was something that all of a sudden hit me today, and I said, uh-oh. So I may have to look at that and see what's possible within the budget.
So there's some uncertainty there, but
I will say that as of today, when I said pit my stomach, I said, "Yep, I think I may have overlooked that." And yes, the answer is I may have to, have a discussion with others about how that would be possible. But the price was fairly cheap for a 4-year insurance. It was a pretty good deal for us, and I forget if it was $20-something or less. But it's something I'd have to look into, yeah. And the other option is this too, and I have to look at it because one of the options might be that because we're going to be doing this on the 2nd year, right? That leaves us, we took a 4-year insurance program out. And if we lose a device, let's say we lost a device and we had to go with a different serial number, we can put that different device back on. As long as we take one off, we can put one back on. So if we got a 4-year insurance and we have X number of devices that are insured and we take 400 out of play, right, and we replace it with those 400, we would, in my mind standing here right now, and I'll double check every bit of this, but my mind right now means we would have 2 more years of insurance. So my panic is not so great when I think of it that way, because I think we might actually be insured for 2 more years, and then we'd have to make a decision on what we're going to do for insurance for all the devices at the high school at that point. So I'm feeling better now that I just talked that out with you.
I can see that. But 4 years for insurance on a Chromebook is, first of all, it's pretty amazing that we can get that.
Yep.
If we continue that cycle and maintain that ratio, I think in several years, I mean, we'll have someone that will have to deal with sending out the repairs or replacements or devices, but it won't be actually repairing them on site or sending them out to getting them repaired. So that should be pretty nice to have that opportunity. One thing I did not hear of, and I think it's your department, and that's the district-wide website.
Okay, so it is in my budget. I think I have some really good news, but I'm really about 2 weeks away from sharing it, but we'll give you the heads up on it. Contacted a company called School Blocks. They've got some really nice stuff. Their ADA compliance model is amazing. I saw what they've done in a year is really amazing, and we need to be in compliance with ADA, obviously. So they gave a presentation. Amber Eliason and myself were there. We listened to the demo. We were both impressed. Amber was ecstatic about what she saw, and she's very tech savvy as well, and obviously has done a lot of creating websites in the district. That's why I invited her. Unfortunately, Bill and others just didn't have the time in their schedules to be there. We've set up another opportunity, which is in the first week of April. And I can make sure that you all get, if you want to be there, I certainly send out a notice to say, we're having this demo done. It's a 45-minute demo. And I think it would be a great opportunity to sit down and see where we can go with our website. And the part that really makes me excited is that School Blocks makes it very user-friendly, and they do all the design for us. So when we think about some of the sites, our own, and others that we look at that we say, oh, we really wish we had something more professionally done, they are, that's what they do. They design websites for a living, and they have the education and the background to do it and really produce something nice. And it will allow us to get a really nice website that works on an iPhone, Android, iPad, whatever device you're holding. It adjusts automatically to that device and looks nice and clean and crisp. And I think that's really good. And then the teacher contact information section is consistent throughout your whole, can be consistent throughout your whole district. They will move all of our content from all of our school sites, not teacher sites, school sites and district site for $200. They'll move all our content into their website that they built for us, and then and that's a one-time fee, and then. It's just what I saw in my look, and you can Google School Blocks if you want. You'll probably see what I'm talking about, and there's videos they have. So I'm really anxious to, and you know what? The best part about it is price is right. I believe it's right around $6,000 to pull this whole thing off. That's unbelievable. I talked to people where they were talking about prices like $50,000, $35,000. And it all, by the way, School Blocks is all tied right in with Google. If you are a Google school, that will mesh right in beautifully. So we did a little research. We found the one that sounds promising for the price point that we had to work with. So I have that money, yes, in the budget for next year. Uh-oh. There you go.
Do you know if there's any other school districts in Maine that are using it so we could see?
Lake Region.
Lake Region, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I did check on that. He was real excited because he turned around at one point and said, "You're going to be the first school in Maine to go with School Blocks." And he said, "I couldn't be more ecstatic." The guy that was taking care of this, Mark Sculto, I think is his name, and he basically took us through it, and he basically said that he was so excited because he wanted to make us the show place for Maine. And then last time I talked to him, he said, "Oh, got Lake Region in." So I said, "That's all right." He's still excited. So, yeah.
I can't see you. I just want a clarification on item the administrative assistant. I thought that was being split. between
Yeah, originally,
facilities?
the conversation was, and it was kind of between, we were willing to take anything we could get. To be quite honest with you, at that time, we were like, if we can get half, we get half. We had conversations with Bobby and so forth about what it really meant, and Louis and his stuff and my stuff, and seeing what a person could imagine a person splitting between two fairly sizable departments and having to change gears and be able to do that. Moving from, with all the materials like the things I read to you, that has to be done from both Louis' department and my department. I did check in Auburn to see if the tech integrator, the tech director over in Auburn had an administrative assistant, and he does. But the overwhelming number of tasks and so forth just led us to the end to say, are we going to be overwhelming that person? And so that's why we made that decision.
Just on that point, and I appreciate it's in your budget presentation, but what's actually in the budget? It was half, right? Yeah, that's what I thought. Thank you.
Yeah.
Ms. Roy, are you saying we should add that to our list to review again?
It's just not the same way that Louis presents this, so I just wanted to make sure that we had the numbers right. It says 44 here, it says 20-something. Louis, so in the budget it's 50-50.
Can you hit your buttons there?
I thought I first sent it to you before, so if that's a change that you hadn't heard about, I apologize.
Mr. Jensen.
To follow up. Is it going into the tech budget, the facilities, or is it being split? I guess just where it would be located.
Yeah. Are you talking about physically, or are you talking about financially?
Financially.
It would be split 50-50.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That was the only question I had. I had a couple comments, though. Try and keep it under 20 seconds here. One, the tech resources list that you gave to us.
Oh yeah, I didn't. That's a real key resource that I hadn't had a chance to really talk about that. But just look at the numbers. I mean, you look at the the 10 to 12, the 7 to 12 range. We have some work cut out for us. I mean, I can tell you that when I came in and saw what was going on at the elementary level with teachers, I was blown away. And that's last year. To me, it was morally it had to change. It just had. There was an inequity that would, So I think we still have work to do, but I try to keep us within a budget. So.
Absolutely. I think it's a great list. Thanks for getting this resource.
Yep.
A couple other things. I was very happy to see that the long-lead teacher laptops will be new ones, because I know about that.
Yep.
So very cool. My apologies. Let's see. The other thing I noticed, I remember particularly from last budget cycle, talking about the servers here for the district,
Yep.
and how warranty issues happened,
Yep.
making that a priority. So I'm very happy to.
Saying stop talking. I'm just kidding.
10 more seconds. Give me 10. I just want to say I'm very glad to see this. Making progress with that.
Yep, great.
So great.
Yep,
Great job,
thank you.
Dave. Thanks.
Thank you. You really feel old when one of your former students is on the board asking questions.
Any other discussion from the board? You mentioned Lake Region. Did they just sign up, or
I
is
think
the
they
website-
just started. I think they just started.
So it's not something.
And I can reach.
Oh, so it is.
Oh, good. Just so they're already up there. Yep, good.
Thanks for checking on that. I was impressed by this chart that you gave
Yeah,
us.
I give Tom Seeley credit on that one. He pulled that data right out of the
What I
help
thought
desk.
You must really love July, though. I mean, but it's
Jul-
just like
July's great.
it's just
July, though, the July for me is purchasing. That's where all the July 1 budget comes through, and then we start to do our purchases. And then all the installations and everything else happen, yes, in August, September, and October.
But yeah, you don't look forward to those peaks. Yeah, they come
it's
right after,
different,
which
yeah.
is pretty interesting. Any other discussion? Thank you for giving us an oversight on this. I have to say, like 25 years ago when I was in high school, we had like a computer and writing labs. That was a big thing back then. You know, having most schools probably had 10 was a big thing. I had more in my school, but the future forecast was every student would receive one of these, and we're at that level today.
Yep, we're getting there. Yep.
The part we didn't foresee was the administration side of it. I mean, I came from a smaller district. This is a pretty substantial district, and we need those support services. Otherwise, we're going to be having some substantial concerns, as you pointed out today. So thank you for thank you for your tenure here at Lewiston
Thank you
Public
very much.
Schools, and we appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Before we adjourn, I'd just like to talk about next week, the schedule. Yeah, there was something too I need to put. Okay. Before we adjourn, Mr. Webster and myself want to mention a few things about next week. First of all, sorry, I'm cleaning up here. Monday, I won't be available for the disciplinary action meeting, and we'll also be meeting with our Dan Stockford, our attorney, over the regional service center. Is that correct? So I'm disappointed I'll miss that, but he's going to be coming in to discuss that. So I've appointed Luke Jensen to take my seat at the time, so he'll be operating as chair for that meeting. Also, I just want to point out, because I want to make sure there's clarification here from the board. Mr. Webster passed me about a 12-page document to sign in regards to the regional service center. We discussed this about a week ago. There was a motion to have him continue to talk to Kathy Monteo. So if I sign this, it means it's going to can I finish?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. It means it will go to the voters eventually. But yet we haven't talked about what the board really feels about this, is from what I gather. I thought it was just going to Kathy to process the paperwork for the election. So do you want to? Yeah.
So the board approved the agreement, and that is the agreement that was in your packet of a week or whenever it was ago. Provided, however, you wanted the opportunity to meet with Dan Stockford and talk about the withdrawal procedures before moving forward. So Dan's here on Monday for two reasons. One, it's the only day that he was available, and also if that meeting goes as I hope and expect, that you have a comfort level with the agreement and have the appropriate protections, then on the agenda for Tuesday, City's Council will be the authorization for the vote. And Kathy would proceed with the publication of ballots so that it can go. As it turns out, there's a 30-day requirement in Lewiston for absentee ballots, so it can make the May 8th budget vote. It could be on that same ballot. And if we're able to do that, it will save us thousands of dollars, because that is a local-only election. If we wait till June 12th or November 3rd, those are statewide elections, and you have to use the tabulation ballots for the voting machines. So our simple question would have to be tabulated, and I I didn't get a quote, but Kathy said it'd be several $1,000s more than what we'd pay for the May 8th. So again, Dan Stockford here Monday to answer your questions. And if you're comfortable after that, we will proceed with a council vote on Tuesday. And then just my expectation is that before the end of April, be coming back to the board on the FEDIS grant piece. We had a big meeting on that today, and we basically have a verbal agreement on that, but I haven't seen all the paperwork yet. So that's for Monday. On Wednesday, we have a 6 o'clock budget meeting, and we will be going down the list of all the things the board has identified, as well as things that principals and directors have identified. We will, at that point, have the health insurance quote, which my hope is that we'll have some additional funding there. And I'd like nothing better to be able to give the board some options. But at this point in time, we're not quite sure where we're going to end up. Then the following week, April 9th, will be our next regular meeting of the board, and it would include budget adoption. And my hope is that after Wednesday, we'll have, while the Wednesday will not be a vote, hopefully there's an understanding of what the final budget, and we would make that adjustment, pass out new budgets, and have the board approve that on Monday night, April 9th. And then, did I mention there's a disciplinary meeting this Monday coming? There will also be one a week from Wednesday, I'm sorry to say. You might guess what that might be in regard to. The other party was unable to make Monday. The grievance at this point, if we don't do something in negotiations, and we could talk more about that, will be on May 16th.
So there is no grievance on Monday? There's no grievance. But there is a disciplinary action? Yes. Okay. Just want to clarify. So Monday you're meeting with Dan Stockford. Regardless of what's discussed there, it's still going to City Council on Tuesday for them to vote to see if it goes to election. Is that correct?
Unless the board determined that we were going to withdraw and not
This
do
board?
that. Yes.
Or that board?
This board.
Okay, so when will this board decide that?
Monday.
Okay.
With Dan Stockford.
I just didn't know if that was a general discussion without any determination. Okay. So, well, what the board did not see is the 12-page document. That's all. And
No, that was distributed with the packet, the meeting that we voted on that agreement.
I didn't see it in the packet. I just saw what we wrote, well, unless I'm totally missing it.
It's not in this packet.
No, it was.
We looked at it, but we said it, we've only taken at the first look in that meeting.
Okay.
Whenever that was the first committee.
So either I was blind to it or. Okay.
We looked at it at the time and then said we needed more time.
Right. I remember that. Okay. So I'm just forgetful, I guess, because this is not what I remember seeing. Okay.
I don't know what that is.
Anyway.
Well, the agreement you had may not have had all the names put in. Perhaps I'd have to go back and look at that, but it's the same agreement.
Any further discussion from the board?
So Dan Stockford, as far as from what I recall from the meeting, we had one question that we wanted to ask him, whether once it was voted by the citizens, did the board have the authority to change that? So I'm not sure why we asked for the attorney to actually attend for that purpose. For that one question, when I think you could ask them that question and shared with us, unless there are other questions that I'm not aware of that have come up.
My understanding from the board was that you really wanted to hear from the lawyer directly. In my conversations with him, I'm comfortable the board is protected, but I'm not an attorney. And get complicated. So I think the prudent thing would be to have him here, and just so that you have 100% comfort that we're doing the right thing for Lewiston.
That concern, though, wasn't there when you were asking us to vote on it. So we brought up a question, and one of us asked that, you know, we run this by the attorney. So, I mean.
So what I had, what I asked for after that concern was expressed would be, would the board be willing to still approve the agreement, knowing that you could meet with Dan Stockford before the final determination, because that allowed me to send the agreement to the Commissioner of Education, who has given his approval on the agreement. So it saved us at least a week, so that we could still meet the deadline to move forward and make the May 8th, if that's what we decide to do, and save money in that vote.
It sounds like you're shifting it, but that's okay. One other question. Last time was the first reading, and this will be a second reading, or that first vote, was that?
Last time it was a vote to approve the agreement, holding open the possibility of revisiting it based upon a meeting with Dan Stockford. And I don't have the minutes right in front of me, but that's the essence of the motion.
All right, very good, thank you.
I am going to reiterate again, we're jumping feet first, again. I was opposed then, I'm opposed now. I don't think this board has been presented enough factual information to determine whether or not we want to move forward. It was my understanding that was a first reading, and it would come back to us again. That's what we discussed. We wanted to meet with the attorney to find out about the withdrawal. I had concerns about the board of directors only being the 4 superintendents and the oversight that was going to be, and I will continue to oppose this going forward until my questions are answered.
So I found the packet, so now it refreshes my mind. So yes, it was there. Thank you. And what was moved, I'm not sure which one it was specifically, but there was 2 motions here. It says to move to approve entering into a regional service center with 1 or more other school districts in the form materially presented herein and authorized by the school committee chair to sign the agreement on behalf of the public schools. But yes, what Ms. Hutchinson mentioned was that it was going to be a first read, and that you were going to present it to Kathy Monteo so that you would meet the deadline. So
I respectfully disagree. It was not a first read. I'm not saying that someone didn't interpret it as a first read, but it was so that I could send it to the Commission of Education, because we needed that in order to meet the deadline. And that's why I arranged for Dan Stockford to be here. I had tried to get him here tonight. He was not available tonight, but he can be here on Monday, which is before it would go to the council. And as I said then, if the board is satisfied with a withdrawal, this represents to Lewiston over $250,000. And I don't take those 4 teacher positions lightly, because this is supporting our budget presently.
It also adds an extreme layer of government where it shouldn't be. So, and I'm not against this. Honestly, I haven't come to a final decision other than, you know, I voted to support this. But that discussion was to have Dan Stockford give you an opinion to share with us, not to have Dan Stockford attend a meeting. So I think there is a difference of opinion, but I just, you know, when you said that again, I just wanted to correct what my feeling was at that meeting and what I asked for. I mean, I'm the one who requested that it be run by the attorney. Never to have the attorney attend a meeting and pay the attorney fees.
Just really, quickly, I have in my notes here from last meeting that we had the 8-1 vote with Ms. Hutchinson was the only dissenting vote to approve the motion with a caveat to have the school committee vote on the item once again. So if we're not going to have the chance to vote once again, we want to, maybe some of us change our votes on that. That was the note that I got, and I was under the impression of colleagues here.
So the agenda hasn't been finalized for Monday. I'm happy to with the chair's permission to put in a reaffirmation, or we'll have to work on the actual wording. I can certainly speak to Dan Stockford, and he could put an opinion in writing. I think for him to draft an opinion that would answer all the and try to anticipate all the questions would be every bit as expensive as getting him here for a half hour, 45 minutes. But I'll defer to what the board want. But my concern is that whatever he did would still raise the question, and so if you can answer or ask him directly, I would think that would be to your benefit. But I'll stand with whatever the board would like to have done.
Well, the one question, unless, you know, and I'm not trying to speak for the board, but the only one question that was brought up that we wanted at the time to run by Dan was whether we could change the will of the people that they voted on. So, I mean, as far as I know, there aren't any other legal questions, but again, I'm not trying to speak for the board.
No, it wasn't a question. It was just a concern I have. To give 4 superintendents that kind of power with no oversight from any of the school committees is concerning to me.
Maybe with a thumbs up. I think what Mr. Kerr is saying is that he has one simple question that we can just ask the attorney and not have him come and be more of a cost to our district. I think that's the one clarifying question that we might have. There might be some others, but is that, am I correct in assuming, hearing what you're saying?
Right. If he's coming here for that one question that I proposed at the meeting, then I'm just not sure I see the need for that. But since that date, if other committee members have questions, then, you know, I'm not trying to stifle other committee members. But on that date, that was one question that we asked to be answered. So, and I'm not sure we need an attorney to come to a meeting to answer that.
I think one of the other questions was, if we were to go into this agreement, how can we step out of it? And so that was the same question. Okay, so I guess if we can get that answer sometime this week via email or contact us, that would be great. At the same time, I think what Mr. Webster just proposed is that we could rediscuss this, have this discussion again, and figure out what the board would like to do as a second read, or based. Yeah. Well, when's the deadline?
Well, I was going to have you sign it, but I wasn't going to do anything with it until after Monday's meeting. So if you wanted to sign it on Tuesday, that's fine by me.
Okay. So I'll refrain from signing it until Tuesday, and with the determination of what this committee has decided. Yeah. Well, I'm also going to be able to be contacted via phone or email as well. So yes, but I'll be back on sometime on Tuesday, and it needs to be submitted what, Tuesday or Wednesday?
Well, it's more. I would send it to the signed copy to the commissioner on Tuesday. I think I can defer until that time, but more significantly, Tuesday night is the vote of the council.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was wondering. Okay. Very good.
Mr. Chair. Monday is not a regularly scheduled meeting. Are we able to have a vote on Monday without it being properly advertised?
So we've regularly done this, provided that we get the agenda out at least 3 days in advance, and it will go out on Thursday. So it will be publicized as we would normally do, and it should be picked up by the Sun Journal, and I'll also put it on social media.
I need further discussion from the board. Seeing none, is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Jensen and Roy, those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.